What's the most important feature to watch out for when you're shopping for an LPVO? If you said Illumination, you're fired. Buy a red dot. I probably won't win any friends with this video, but I think red dot bright illumination is unnecessary on an LPVO, and I also think first focal plane LPVOs are generally worse than second focal plane. Let's start by defining what terms we're going to use to refer to different brightness levels of scope illumination, because everybody talks about this differently. At the very bottom of the scale, you have reticles that are twilight bright. This is mostly hunting scopes and high magnification scopes. You have a little bit of illumination to allow you to take shots in the twilight or dawn hours, very common when you're hunting. When it gets dark outside, your target becomes dark, and if your reticle is dark, well, gosh, that's not a lot of contrast, is it? If you use one of these scopes when the sun is still out, most likely you'll just see the reticle turn from black to dark red. One step above that is what I would call daylight visible. This is mostly just usable to give you a bit of contrast against a dark target by turning your reticle from black to red. One step beyond that is what I would refer to as daylight bright, but I think that term gets over-applied by scope manufacturers. Most of them will never say it out loud, but they're sort of implying that daylight brightness is the maximum amount of brightness you could ever expect. At the top of the spectrum, we have red dot bright illumination, which is something only achieved by red dots and a very, very small number of LPVOs. The truly red dot bright LPVOs all use the same style of illumination. There are two main ways to illuminate the reticle on a magnified optic. One of them is to illuminate an etched reticle with an LED that is shown at it from the back of the scope, reflects off of the reticle and into your eyeball. To make this type of illuminated reticle, part or all of the reticle etching is filled with some kind of reflective material so that it will reflect the LED that's placed at the back of the optic. Truly red dot bright LPVOs require that the source of illumination is actually suspended in the center of the reticle and projecting back directly into your eyeball. It may not be totally intuitive how this works, but there are two ways to make it easier to understand. One is the way that Primary Arms refers to this style of illumination in their new ACSS Nova scopes. Primary Arms calls this type of illumination fiber wire because there is a fiber optic pipe illuminated by an LED that is suspended in a wire reticle. Another thing that makes this type of illumination much easier to understand is to look at a picture of a broken vortex razor. In this picture, you can see that the reticle element that actually produces the illumination has fallen out of position and is no longer centered in the reticle. There are several LPVOs that use this fiber wire style of illumination. Another aspect these scopes all have in common is that their reticle design is very simplistic because these are old school wire reticles. It's not a whole lot different from when scopes had crosshairs, as in a cross shape made up of horsehairs that were suspended in the reticle. Maybe not horse, but you get the idea. These reticles are limited by what you can accomplish with pieces of wire that are actually attached to the sides of the scope and suspended in the middle of the image. The main reason these extremely bright fiber wire style illuminated LPVOs are not more popular, bordering on ubiquitous, is because they kind of miss the point of what an LPVO is supposed to be. Scopes that have etched reticles, that is to say reticle designs which are actually engraved onto one of the panes of glass in the scope, can be significantly more complicated. They can be a lot finer in detail, and they can also include a whole lot more information, as well as pieces of the reticle that are just fully suspended away from the center of the reticle design. This video was made possible by Blue Alpha Gear. These guys are a new sponsor to the channel, but I've been a fan of them for a long time already. Back when I first got hired to make videos for TFB TV, Blue Alpha Gear sent me one of their hybrid EDC belts, and I've been wearing it every day for the last 5 years. If you carry a handgun, you need a good stiff belt to support the weight. Blue Alpha's EDC belts are rigid and extremely durable. After 5 years of daily use, my original belt is still in perfect condition. I got another one just to have it in a different color. My preferred version is the hybrid EDC, which has a smaller version of the Cobra buckles you typically see on battle belts. They also make a low-profile belt that might work better with certain styles of appendix holster. The buckle on the hybrid EDC belt is small enough to thread through belt loops, and it makes it much easier to go to the bathroom. Check out Blue Alpha Gear at the link in the video description for EDC belts, battle belts, and more high-quality American-made tactical nylon. A big thank you to Blue Alpha Gear for supporting this channel. Thank you guys for watching. Let's get back into today's unhinged rant. Which is more important, an LPVO with lots of useful elements in the reticle, or one with red dot bright illumination? That depends what you think LPVOs are for. If it's for a competition rifle, maybe red dot bright illumination is your huckleberry, and the ability to go to 6 power for shots on those tiny KYL targets at 100 yards is just a cool bonus. The same is true if you want an optic to shoot primarily at the 25-yard indoor range, but you still want recce rifle cred on R/AR-15. No offense to all of you BCM owners. If the LPVO is a combat optic for a fighting rifle, the requirements are very different. A magnified optic on a fighting rifle is used to find the target, identify the target, range the target, and engage the target, and for that you need a BDC reticle with fast and intuitive ranging elements. Think of it like an ACOG that goes from 1 to 6 instead of being stuck at 3.5 or 4. Alternatively, think of it like an LCAN that can get dirty without losing 0.
419.
Faux hammer. Alright, now it's time to use my years of YouTube experience to predict what some of the comments are going to be and answer them before you finish typing. What about super bright fiber wire style LPVOs that also have BDC reticles? For example, the Steiner PX4i with the classic P3TR reticle, or the recently released BDC reticle version of the ACSS Nova 1-6. These incorporate shoulder width ranging lines and BDCs calibrated pretty closely to typical intermediate cartridge ballistics. While that's a nice feature, these optics don't need ultra-bright illumination because they have thick, high-visibility crosshairs that extend all the way to the center of the reticle. They have to. That's how they get the fiber optic pipe in there, remember? This is why LPVO illumination is a paradox. Fiber wire LPVOs have red dot bright illumination, but they don't need it. The BDC reticle elements in those optics are also quite thick compared to the lines in an etched reticle, so for some of those longer range holds, the reticle might be thicker than your entire target. As anyone who's used an ACOG can attest, the 600-meter hash mark might as well be decorative. I know you just backspaced your comment and started drafting a new one, but I actually predicted that one too. What about first focal plane etched reticle LPVOs with the illumination cranked up to spinal tap levels, like the Vortex Razor 1-10 or the Nightforce NX8 1-8? Optics like these really need bright illumination to work at 1x because the first focal plane reticle is almost impossible to see without it. Scopes like the NX8, the Razor 1-10, or even the Voodoo 1-10 all give you some larger outside reticle elements to help bracket the target, but that only works to a range of about 15 yards. The Razor 1-10 and NX8 1-8 both solve this problem with extremely bright illumination, pushing the upper limits of daylight bright and into the lower end of red dot bright. Problem solved, for about 8 to 16 hours until the battery runs out. In order for these scopes to work as advertised at 1x, you need to have the brightness maxed out. For competition shooting, where the optic is going to be used for 2 minutes at a time, 8 times in one day, once a month, that's not a problem. For a fighting rifle, an operational window of 8 to 16 hours doesn't seem like enough. I mean, some of you guys have a panic attack if you see an EOTech without a pair of backup iron sights. Battery life isn't the only downside to this kind of optic. Reflected illumination LPVOs exhibit significantly more downrange signature compared to fiber wire types. Also, in order to make them this bright, the center part of the reticle has to be pretty large to carry enough reflective material, so at higher magnification levels, it can obscure more of the target than you want. The illumination on first focal plane reticles also disappears when you aren't perfectly centered behind the optic, which doesn't happen with second focal plane reticles. This can be a major impediment to using them at close range. I think the appeal of first focal plane LPVOs is just the prestige effect of first focal plane. It usually costs more, and that means it's better. First focal plane LPVOs sound great on paper. The advantage of first focal plane is that the ranging features and BDC features of the reticle are accurate at all magnification levels, not just the maximum. So, what if you need to range or engage a target at 4.5x magnification instead of 6? The short answer is you won't. If the target is beyond your max point blank range, you're going to want to be on 6. Now, if we get into the 1-8 or 1-10 magnification ranges, first focal plane starts to sound more useful. But then again, at that point, a real scope starts to sound more useful, because a good 1-8 LPVO is hard to get right, and a good 1-10 LPVO hasn't been done yet. I think we have time to interdict one last angry comment. Okay then, jackass, what LPVO do you recommend? This one comes from that guy who only watches my videos biannually and thinks I hate everything. Guess what? You got debated into another video about how much I love the Trijicon Credo 1-6 with the segmented circle BDC reticle. An excellent high visibility reticle that isn't too fine or too coarse at either 1x or 6x, a BDC calibrated to the most common loads and barrel length for an AR, and simple intuitive ranging features. They're also lightweight, built extremely well, with great controls and glass. I'm not like Mr. LPVO or anything, but I still regret selling that scope. It really is perfect. But if you want more magnification and you want to flex your first focal E-peen on sniper's hide, genuinely one of the best LPVOs on the market right now is the Primary Arms PLXC 1-8. The reticle design is a bit busy, but it scales extremely well and has built-in ranging and VDC features. The illumination isn't great, but unlike most first focal plane LPVOs, the PLXC doesn't need it because at 1x you have lines extending all the way into the center of the reticle and a usable center aiming point. This one is also lightweight, built extremely well with great controls and glass. But to meet the market's feverish demand for brighter illumination, Primary Arms decided to offer it with the ACSS Nova reticle. Take a scope with a good reticle that didn't need bright illumination, make the reticle worse, and add bright illumination. You know that reticle is going to be thick as hell at 8x, but at least it won't look like a TIE fighter targeting computer. Alright, that's all for today, guys. Thank you for watching. Join me next time when we attempt to graph out the subjective usability of various LPVOs across their magnification ranges. I'm just kidding, we're probably going to talk about a handgun from the 90s. If you like this channel, please subscribe to it. If you'd like to support me more directly, check out the links in the video description. And if you have any questions, let me know in the comments section. See you guys next time.
Give me a bit here.
I don't think this target exists.
It exists, I promise.
I think you imagined it.
Shut up! Where is it? It was like borderline visible to the naked eye.
But the truth was, there never had been a target.